The scent of her lavender shampoo still lingered on my pillow, a sweet, deceptive fragrance that now felt like a poison. For 5 years, Chloe had been my world. Her laughter was the soundtrack to my life, her touch the only comfort I needed. We were that couple, the one friends envied, the one who seemed to have figured out the secret to happiness. But secrets, I was learning, have a way of festering in the dark. It started subtly, as these things often do. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Her phone, once a shared device for music and photos, was now perpetually face down, guarded like a state secret. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd smile that brilliant smile and say, "Just Sarah, stressing about work again." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Trust was the foundation we had built our lives on, but the cracks in that foundation were starting to show. There was the time I came home early to surprise her and found her scrambling to end a call. Her face flushed, her voice a nervous whisper. "A telemarketer," she'd said, avoiding my eyes. Then there were the receipts I found, for dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, for 2 people. "A business dinner," she'd explain, the excuse already prepared, sounding a little too smooth, a little too rehearsed. Each lie was a small cut, but they were adding up, bleeding me of my certainty, of my peace. I was living with a stranger, a woman who looked like my wife, who sounded like my wife, but whose heart was a locked room I no longer had the key to. The warmth of her hand in mine felt different, a performance rather than genuine affection. Her heart, I was beginning to fear, was beating for someone else. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday. She said she was going out with her girlfriends. I had a gut feeling, a cold, heavy certainty that settled in my stomach. I couldn't explain it, but I knew she was lying. An hour after she left, I drove past the Oak and Vine, her supposed destination. Her friends' cars were there, but hers was missing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I just kept driving, my mind a blank, until I found myself parked across the street from a small boutique hotel on the other side of town. And there it was, her car, parked right out front. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the rain drumming a mournful rhythm on the roof. I felt numb, detached, as if I were watching a scene from a tragic movie. I wanted to storm in, to confront her, to scream, but what good would it do? The image was seared into my brain. Her car, that hotel, the betrayal. I drove home in a daze. The house felt cavernous and cold. Every photo of us smiling, every little trinket that represented a shared memory, now seemed like a monument to a lie. When she finally came home, smelling of rain and a perfume that wasn't hers, she smiled and asked how my night was. "Quiet?" I said, my voice hollow. I looked at the woman I loved, the woman who had promised to love me, and I saw a stranger. Her touch felt warm as she kissed my cheek, but I knew, with a devastating finality, that her heart belonged to someone else entirely. The next morning, the silence was deafening. She chattered on about her night, about the funny things Sarah said, weaving a tapestry of lies with effortless skill. I just watched her, seeing everything with a painful new clarity. The way her eyes darted away when I held her gaze for too long, the slight tremor in her hand as she poured her coffee. She was a brilliant actress, and I had been her most devoted audience. "Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through her monologue. She stopped, a forkful of eggs halfway to her mouth. "We need to talk." Fear flickered in her eyes, a genuine emotion for the first time in what felt like months. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just laid out the facts, calmly and quietly. The late nights, the secret texts, the restaurant receipts, and finally her car at the hotel. Her face crumbled. The mask fell away, and for the first time, I saw the woman underneath, scared, guilty, and cornered. The denials were weak, half-hearted, before they dissolved into sobs. The truth came out in a torrent of tears and confessions. His name was Mark, a colleague from a new project. "It started as a friendship, an emotional connection," she said, as if those words could soften the blow. "It became more the dinners, the late nights, the hotel. It was all true. She swore it was a mistake, that she loved me, that she didn't want to lose me. But her words felt like echoes in a vast, empty space. How can you love someone while you are actively, methodically, and repeatedly betraying them? The love she spoke of felt like a ghost, a memory of something that once was, but was now gone. The warmth of her touch had been a lie, a cover for a heart that had wandered far from home. Listening to her, I realized the woman I married didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe I had only ever been in love with a character she was playing. The pain was immense, a physical ache in my chest. But underneath the pain, a strange sense of clarity began to form. The constant anxiety, the gnawing suspicion, the feeling of walking on eggshells in my own home, it was all gone, replaced by the brutal, cold, but honest truth. I told her I needed space, that I needed to think. I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother. The days that followed were a blur of grief and anger. Friends rallied around me, offering support and a much-needed distraction. In their company, I began to see a flicker of light at the end of a very long, dark tunnel. I started to remember who I was before us. I rediscovered old hobbies, reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, and slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild my sense of self. It wasn't easy. There were nights I'd lie awake, the phantom scent of her lavender shampoo haunting me, the memory of her laughter a painful echo. Forgiveness is a complex journey, and rebuilding trust, especially in oneself, takes time. But with each passing day, her memory faded a little more. The pain became less sharp, replaced by a quiet strength I didn't know I had. The betrayal was a deep wound, but it wasn't a fatal one. It was a painful, devastating chapter of my life, but it wasn't the whole story. I learned that you can't control someone else's heart, but you can control how you respond when yours is broken. You can choose to let it destroy you, or you can choose to find the strength to heal and move forward. I chose to move forward, toward a future where the love I receive is as real and true as the love I give. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, know that you are not alone, and healing is possible. Please hit that like button if this resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about navigating life's toughest challenges. See you in the next one.